And I think that is the recipe for performance anxiety. It's never going to go away, but at the same time, it's really cool that it's never going to go away.
It's the truth.
There we go.
That's how you know you're living, man.
We have found ourselves in the month of May, which for those of you in the collegiate baseball setting, you will be well aware this is conference tournament season. We are anticipating NCAA regional season. We've got the Juco World Series coming out. Shout out Iowa Central Tritons. Shout out South Mountain Cougars. Let's go. Right on. Enid, Oklahoma is the place that it goes down. I didn't think I was going to plant that one in so quickly.
Can't wait for that face-off, dude. We got to watch that. Let's do a watch party.
Dude, if they play each other, we're flying in. Here we go. Oh, my goodness. No, I know that this is a really cool time of year because you start to realize, particularly in the college game, you see a couple players with their backs against the wall. And I don't think that you see this in the pro setting because you have 7-game series in the postseason. Sure, you used to have the wild card games in Major League Baseball, but I want to go to you first as a player and, of course, as a coach with the background. Just give me the list, the bullet points of what do you see in a double elimination setting in college? From afar, what's different compared to the regular season?
Oh, I think you have to blend the idea that this could be your last game or to win this game today, but also be prepared for the next day. That's the hardest part. Because, you designate a weekend, you have 3 starters for the weekend. It's like that guy's not going today. But like we had a guy who was potentially starting the next game that, I had to tell him, I was like, hey, maybe you might go in this game. Like that might be something that we do, just depending on the situation. We'll figure out the next game later. So it's kind of like a all hands on deck for every inning rather than just, you're hot today, you're not, you're down, you're up, etc. At least from the pitching side of things.
Sure. I remember seeing a game, I want to say this was, I think, a couple of years ago, ALDS, I believe. Lance McCullers was thrown for the Astros, and he anticipated being the starter for whatever next game was coming out. They didn't know what it was for certain, but there was a chance that he was going to go out of the bullpen, and I believe it was like a game 5 or a game 6 where the Astros were facing elimination. The game ended, the Astros won, which meant they're playing the next day. And immediately after the handshake line, you see McCullers and somebody else go out to the outfield and start playing catch because it was, I'm starting tomorrow. I need to get my work in because I don't know. Like, I was ready to go out of the bullpen today, but now I need to get my throwing in. So literally people are leaving Minute Maid Park and you see him out there going and getting his work going. Yeah. I think that this is a huge testament to the unpredictability of the game itself. And I know I mentioned this happens in college specifically. It does happen in the pro game, but I think it's a little bit less likely just because of the way that the postseason setups are coordinated like that. But this is something that I kind of wanted to touch on, the elements of, call it performance anxiety, call it whatever you bring with you towards the end. And this could happen with, early in the season, you might see this if somebody is unfamiliar to a new area. Evan, I know maybe in your pro debut, you had a little bit of a different intensity as opposed to game 50 or 60 of your pro career, as anybody can understand. Major league debuts are going to be different than your 20th start of the season, and I think that's understood across the board. But I'm curious as far as what you have seen over the flow of a season, ranging from maybe the opening day jitters that you get to you kind of hit the dog days of summer, or you hit those late spring conference games that it started to become normal and it started to become more of a routine cadence. Do you think that it's possible for those elements of, let's call it performance anxiety for this sake, starting at the beginning of the season, you got those jitters out of the way, and then they all of a sudden resurface at the end of the year? Is it kind of like a roller coaster that you see this keep coming back?
I think that, confidence is earned, right? Like in the situation at the beginning of the year, almost a person who begins to struggle or like begins their season with struggle it'll likely take them longer to like overcome that hump, especially if they're in like a new league that they've never been in before. But you could watch it too, inning to inning. Like there's examples of guys who come in the game with runners on, and you can see that they're a little bit like, wobbly. But then as soon as
they give them a fresh frame right after,
they get a little wobbly, and then like they get out of that inning, and then when they go back out, it's like it's a whole new ball game because they were drawing confidence from like what happened in that inning. But like the reality is that like baseball is such a game of chance, and you can't really determine what happens. The hard part about being a pitcher is everything feels like your fault, but it's likely not the case, right? Like unless you walk around on 4 pitches, like a lot of it's not really your fault. You can try to execute as best you can, and I would say there's a good chance that the outing that you executed the best is probably not you feel your best outing.
Yes. That's very interesting as far as just bringing your pure stuff to the table as well. And I mean, I think I remember you talking about the pitching reports when you were with the Mariners. There would be a pitcher that had maybe a really rough outing and it wasn't what they wanted it to be. And then in the clubhouse after the game, they would look at their report and they would see that they pretty much got like a passing grade in the event itself. And you realize how warped the context is based on, all right, here's how I assigned meaning. Here's what I think was really good. Here's what the report's telling me. I did okay. Like, even just to see the natural contradictions of how this game goes itself. And, like you mentioned, you can have routine flares that are dropping for hits, or you can have absolute missiles at outfielders that are being caught for outs. It's the biggest living contradiction in sports, I feel, or at least it's certainly one of them.
Oh, yeah.
I think as a whole, and I mean, I can recall, new settings make sense that you might be a little bit more apprehensive going in. I can imagine if I was going to make a start at Yankee Stadium tomorrow, it's going to be a little bit different than if I'm going to my hometown field that I've been to millions of times, of course. But I think as far as, what I really wanted to do when we started this show is treat this as an anchor that people know that they're never really alone. And I can recall me growing up when I was a starter. I remember going to games, being a little bit jittery. Naturally, you've got performance anxiety because it matters to you. And if anybody tries to say that they don't have any, they're full of shit. Let's just call it what it is. I don't know if we were going very family friendly, but that's one thing. Everybody has this. This is the way it is. So, for lack of a better term, it is what it is. But I can remember this actually happened. Evan, I think this was when we played summer ball together. There was a starting pitcher that you were not throwing that day. I don't think I was either. And I looked from afar at whoever was starting that day. And I remember seeing them, at lunch before. They're not really eating anything. And they even made a comment saying, I know I need to put something down, but I just can't do it. And it was such a context moment because I realized, wait a minute, people feel like this. I feel like this. Like, this is normal.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was so validating that I realized that I felt like this for years when I'm a starting pitcher. All of a sudden, I'm not the only one that feels this. And I feel like that's something that gets very caught up. And I think part of the reason that some people gravitate toward being relief pitchers is because the phone rings, you're up. You don't have time to think about the anticipation that goes into it. And you also don't have to, if you have a bad start, you have to wait 6 days for your next start, or sometimes 7, sometimes 8, whatever it is. And that entire week you're spending thinking and anticipating. I can circle the day on the calendar that I'm going to throw. I think I didn't have a very good strategy at mitigating this when I was younger, because I remember thinking to myself, no disrespect to my little league teams, but I would show up to the field going, all right, well, I'm a little nervous, I'm a little jittery, but I also think I'm the most qualified here to pitch, so it's probably a good thing that I'm throwing. I know that's kind of arrogant, and I don't mean it that way, but I was like, okay, well, I'm getting outs more than anybody else, and all right, I'm nervous, but who else is? Somebody's got to do it, and it might as well be me, I guess. All right, so you get a little bit older, the competition gets a little bit stiffer. I realize I can't fall back on that rationale anymore. Where do I go for this? Where do I lean into this? So, Evan, I now turn it to you because, one, your starter career lasted a lot longer than I did. Two, your job is to lead a tremendous set of young men as a pitching coach. So I'm just curious about the overall things that we can lean on when we do face those elements of performance anxiety. And I said this through the lens of the postseason or the early season, but did you feel nervous? Because, one, externally, you didn't look nervous ever, and I can attest to that because we played together for a long time. But what did you feel, and what were your strategies to be able to mitigate that?
I mean, one thing that might, give people some peace if they're feeling that way is, I guess, the most nervous that I've ever felt for an outing
Oh, I'm so excited for this. Let's
was
go.
it was the first fall scrimmage my freshman year at Iowa Central.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
I remember I couldn't get my foot. I was putting my foot on the rubber and I couldn't get my heel to touch the ground because my leg was shaking. So like the only thing I had contact with on the ground was my like toes and the balls of my feet. And I kept trying
So
to
you're like an 18-year-old kid right out of high school feeling this at that point.
and this is just like, we don't even have our practice shirts yet. Like I'm just wearing like a hat that I have and like a regular t-shirt and pants and like no pressure there.
Oh,
But that's still, I mean, of all the environments that you've pitched in, it's like that was probably the most nerve-wracking one, which is interesting because like you could look at other ones that were, arguably there should have been more pressure, but
yeah.
like, yeah, of course you were nervous for those, but it was
Hang on,
something
I'm going
about
to cut
the
you
first
off. Let's
time.
reel this in for a second. You were more nervous for a scrimmage in the middle of Iowa than you were facing Adley Rutschman at Oregon State.
Yes, I remember.
That's so cool.
I remember how nervous I was for that, and it was almost like too much to handle. Like I almost couldn't handle it. And then the weird thing is though, the situation, like when you're pitching in a bigger game like that in college, it's like there's so much pressure that you can't afford to be nervous, because if you were in that mindset, you couldn't even be out there in the first place. Like younger me, if I would have given him the ball in that situation, he wouldn't even been able to make it through it. So like it was a learned behavior to handle the pressure. One of the things that I try to communicate to the pitchers that I work with now is that the pressure will never go away. You can't avoid it. There's no, you have to either accept it or it beats you. Like you can't get away from it. There's no way to avoid it. So you have to have some kind of strategy to be able to handle the pressure. And I think that the best strategy often is just preparation. Like if you go out there and you're nervous, then you're not prepared for that moment. I had a really good conversation with a pitcher before. It was like a few days ago. We were doing exit meetings and I had a Major League Baseball in my hand, and we were talking about him being nervous in the conference tournament and then, other games prior and like handling pressure. And I just handed him the baseball and I said, here, what if I told you you are starting at PNC Park tomorrow? Good luck. And then asked him, like, can you handle that? And his response was like, no, I don't think so. I said, exactly. It's part of it, but that's the good answer because it's part of.
How cool that he admitted that. Actually, though, yeah, that takes a man to say that, though. Like instinctively, I was like, oh, that just kind of crushes you. But at the same time, having the awareness to be like, oh, damn, wait a second, like that's actually really cool, though.
Yeah, if somebody actually put you on the spot and said you're starting a big league game tomorrow, it's like, are you prepared enough and have you played enough to be able to handle that? And of course, like a lot of times that performance anxiety goes away with experience, but also you can fake it till you bake it at the same time. Because another response would be like, yes, I got it. And just convince yourself that you got it.
Well, and how sincere? Yeah, like you question the sincerity. Like I think if somebody like, I haven't picked up a baseball to seriously competitively throw in a few months. Well, it's longer than that. I just don't want to admit it. But I think about if somebody came up to me, and I mean, I don't mean to infiltrate this kind of context, but hey, you're starting tomorrow. Like the A's ballpark is a couple miles away. Could you do it? I mean, sure. Like, I'm not going to say no. Like, I mean, I don't have anything to lose. Like, I'll go out and do it, but I don't know if it's going to be competitive. But yeah, I mean, I'll go do this. My elbow's probably going to tear in the second inning, but all right, I'll go.
But I mean, can you handle that is different than like, can you perform well?
Dude, I would be horrible. I would be nervous as hell.
Well, yeah, everybody would.
My arm is in no shape to throw. Like, honestly, if you give me a couple of weeks to gear up, I'll at least challenge people, or at least try to challenge them. But no, honestly, dude, you said that, and he admits saying, like, I don't think I could. Like I felt that inside of realizing like the fact that somebody is able to look themselves in the mirror and say, this is what I need to overcome. This is what I fear. This is where I want to go.
Well,
Like the
because
fact that somebody has that kind of willingness. Yeah.
he understood when I told him, I was like, I'm not. He understood I wasn't talking about physically. He understood that I was talking about mentally, and that's where he was like, no, because he might not have doubts physically. You know, he might be like, yeah, I could do it, but if he has doubts mentally, then it's already over.
Yeah. Well, what a cool position to be that honest with yourself with, too. And I think that's part of the root. I mean, we mentioned just this theme of performance anxiety. I think so much of it is like grounded in the reality that we don't want to admit these things. We don't want to admit that we're ever nervous because we perceive this as a feeling of weakness. We want to go out and we want to challenge people as best as we possibly can. But this is such an important facet of what it is, not only for how you compete as a person, but your love of the game itself. Like I remember thinking to myself, I don't think I've ever shared this before. I needed Tommy John surgery when I was 20. And I remember thinking to myself a year or two before, what if I needed UCL reconstruction? That's a 1-year recovery. And I remember thinking, if I was going to go through that lengthy of a rehab process to get this anxiety again, like I'm going to feel the exact same way, nervous for every start, getting jittery about every outing, letting this control my life. Would I get the surgery? Like I'm putting in a year of my life to just get back to this, to where I'm going to feel nervous again. Is it worth it? Do I want that? And I remember thinking like avoiding that thought altogether is because I didn't want to admit it, because I think deep down inside, I felt to myself like I didn't know the answer. The difference being it eventually tore. And then in the hospital parking lot, as I am on all fours crying my eyes out by myself in the middle of Scottsdale, Arizona, seeing all these plastic surgery patients coming in and out, and I'm sitting here like I just got shot on the curb. Like I remember thinking vividly, going, I need to have this surgery because I can't picture my life any other way, and I need to know that I'm going to show up for this and give it my all. And I think the biggest thing, I wasn't worried physically. I felt like I'd challenged hitters. I was a good arm. But I couldn't go the rest of my life not knowing that I gave that anxiety the attention that it deserved. And that was why, I mean, for multiple reasons why I got the surgery. But I remember that was the biggest thing, is because if I didn't come back from this and if I didn't give this everything I could, I didn't think I could go the rest of my life feeling satisfied with my career. I'm not 100% satisfied with the way my playing career went, because I didn't play as long as I would have liked to. But I do think about being able to pitch in front of a couple thousand people is really cool. And being able to feel comfortable feeding off of that type of energy. You mentioned the most nervous that you ever got playing. I remember when I was coming back from Tommy John surgery, I wasn't quite game ready yet, but I was right at the 1-year mark where it's pretty much a matter of, is your stuff ready to go? Yes or no? And you're either playing in games or you're not playing. It took me about 13 and a half months, probably longer, but gearing up for it, I was throwing simulated games, and it was on our turf practice field with the turtle out. Pitching coach, hitter, catcher, another hitter. There's probably 5 of us out on the field. And I remember hearing somebody say, if you can't handle this, how are you going to handle a game? And I couldn't, because I was a kid. Like, I can't say this to an authority figure as a coach, but I'm like, dude, I can hear the blood rushing through my body right now. There's 5 people here. There's no energy out here. I would rather pitch in front of 15,000 people because I at least have something to feed off of. I've done it before. I know this, but like myself as a musician, I don't mean to dive into this too much, but I would rather play in front of thousands than play in front of 20 or 30 people, because you can see their eyes and you can see their thoughts when it's a smaller audience.
It's almost like it becomes less because there's more. Just turns into white noise.
Yes. I know this too. Like, I mean, different musicians that I've heard. Like, I was in high school, and a trumpet player from my hometown, Ron Miles is his name, big time dude. Somebody asked him, what do you get the most nervous for? And he's playing in front of 30 high schoolers. He said, honestly, 30 people is the most nervous I get. We counted, there was 30 there. And I was like, this is amazing to me. So I think about performance anxiety as a whole. I think one of the biggest misconceptions about this is stripping the realization, and I don't know if younger players can really understand this if they haven't played in front of thousands of people, but I can remember when you and I were at Creighton, we had 9,000 elementary schoolers there. That was a walk in the park. It was awesome. I had 5 people there for a simulated game, and my thoughts are all over the place, and it is unbelievably hectic up there. So I think that it varies for everybody. And that's the kind of thing that what do you put the meaning on? And something that I think is ridiculous too, not to speak myself up again. I played the national anthem for the Sacramento River Cats like a week and a half ago because we needed somebody to cover. I was getting jittery. I was like, all right, it's a Tuesday day game. I'm filling in. And I'm like, why? And I remember like getting upset with myself because I'm like, why do I feel this way? Like I've done this millions of times. This is not a surprise for me. But it's like, what do we create meaning for? And like you mentioned, for that picture that you were just talking about, can you take the ball at PNC Park? Why do we make that so much bigger? Like theoretically, I mean, yes, it's a big league mound.
Yeah.
It's understood. But like if we strip everything away and we realize, all right, we're floating on a rock in space right now. We're all going to die. We're all going to have to pay our taxes. Why? What do we get nervous about? Like, what is it? So I also get pissed off at myself on this because that also makes 0 sense to me half the times.
Well, I guess, I mean, to add to this here, I don't know if like you said, if the environment's better, some people feed off of that. Like we have some guys that feed off of when the environment's bigger, when the moment's bigger, and they struggle when it's really small because they just don't, they're thinking in that moment when it's small and there's not a lot of riding on the game, and maybe there's a big score spread or nobody's there or whatever, or maybe it's a midweek and they think that matters less or whatnot. They perform worse because they're thinking don't screw up. But when the score is close and the game matters, it's like I do better because I'm thinking, I just need to win.
Yeah, let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's a spectrum there, but I want to also emphasize that I don't think performance anxiety is bad all the time. I don't think like you could try your best to avoid it, but it's just like pressure. I mean, you could say those two as like one and the same thing. But you have to have some level of performance anxiety or it's not going to go well. I mean, toward the end of my career, I would get worried when I was running out to the mound and I really just didn't feel like anything at all.
Yeah.
I'd be in the game and I'd be throwing and it'd be a, 5-run game or a 6-run game. And the bottom of the lineup is up or whatever. And it's like this 7th, nobody's there. And I'm just like, you're just thinking like, yep, these guys were going to get weak contact. Like, it's not going to be that much of a struggle. There's not really much riding on it. And you just don't feel anything. And then you end up pitching like crap because you're just like, you don't have that level
I've never felt this. Yeah.
You don't have that sense of urgency that performance anxiety gives you. So I saw this video on social media, and it was this breakdown of what performance anxiety is. And it was, at first, it showed a video of a pitching coach talking to a player in a bullpen, being like, we're trying to execute this pitch. You can't do it. How am I supposed to play you in a game? And if you can't do it here, then you can't do it in a game.
Yeah.
And then it cut to the game, and it had like the narration was the internal thoughts of the pitcher, and he was going like this, and the catcher calls a fastball away and he goes, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, that's good, though. At some point, coaching like that is good, I promise. Because, I mean, I think that I often make the mistake, especially when dealing with kids who maybe not be mature enough to handle like a large time game, or maybe not be used to playing, against Big 12 teams or in these environments where the lights are on and there's pressure, that if I don't implement any kind of pressure in practice, then they're going to struggle when the pressure finally shows up in the game.
Yeah.
And, for some players, right, who have that experience playing, you can afford to lay off of them a little bit and give them, a little bit more freedom and more information, and just let them kind of develop in the way that they need to develop. But not everyone is mature enough to be able to handle that. And not everybody has the experience level to be able to handle that also. I just don't think, I think that some level of performance anxiety is good. I don't think that there is, I don't think that it's good to have none. I think that's almost worse than having some kind of sense of urgency. I remember at Oregon State going into that game, I remember that I felt so much pressure that the only thing I could do was focus on the wind. That's one of the only things I remember. It's just listening to the wind. Cool. Because there were so many people and they were so loud. And I remember hearing the wind going by my ears, and I just focused on that. And that's all I focused on the whole time.
Oh, dude, that's so cool. You've never told me that before. Oh, that's actually awesome.
That's one thing that I really remember from that. And because there was so much performance anxiety, it locked me in. It put me in the space to be able to handle it. It was almost like I had to, like, when there's a lot of people there versus when there's none. If there's a lot of performance anxiety versus when there's minimal at all, suddenly it turns into white noise, and it helps you more than not.
That's the coolest thing. It's interesting to see. I don't like to use the word coping because I feel like that's just ways to mitigate or ways to avoid. I think that, like, success strategies when it comes to performance anxiety. I know that Ken Ravizza is a very revered sports psychologist. H.A. Dorfman is another one that has a lot of very good material talking about these types of things. And they have the medical background to back it too. So I'm not going to sit here and try to say that I have the answers when that's literally what those people do for a living. But what I do know is that I took a lot of their strategies and I've tried to apply it to performance as a whole. And I think about when I was crafting, ultimately, the reason that I wanted to launch this show and the reason that I have used a guiding principle for me to stay through the game of baseball. A very dear friend of mine by the name of Sean Cashman told me, "What's your life mission? We need to come up with this right now. What is your life mission?" He said, "Give me a sentence, come up with this." And I told him it was to cultivate ambition and enthusiasm in others through the art of performance. And I've polished it up over the years, but that was kind of the guiding method of, why do you want to do an episode? Because I want to do that. Why do you want to write articles like this? This is what I want to do. I want to bring out the ambition and the enthusiasm. So I say all of this just for kind of closing points on this. I remember hearing a story about the golfer, Phil Mickelson, was going through a very slump part of his career that he was domed out of his mind. He didn't know what to do. People were giving him some bad comments on the course. Like, fans would chirp just casually in between swings, nothing blatant or golf inappropriate, but it was getting to him. Like, he couldn't handle the feedback, and it was bugging him because he knew that he was getting jittery on the course. His mitigation strategy was anytime he heard somebody say like that, he was going to turn his head, he was going to smile at him, and he was going to give him a thumbs up. He was just going to completely rewire that. So I heard this in Juco. Mind you, you talked about your first fall scrimmage at Iowa Central. Mine was the same when I was at South Mountain in Arizona. The difference was we played on a backfield of the Arizona Diamondbacks spring training complex, and we played against the D-backs scout team. And I remember looking at the roster and seeing where everybody was committed. Now, they were high school kids, but, at the time, I'm 18, fresh out of high school. I think 90% of the roster was either going to Arizona or Arizona State. I'm like, oh, okay, like this is legit right here. But same type of thing. So I remember taking the mound feeling the exact same way, but it was almost like the only thing I felt like I could do was breathe. I realized, all right, so I've never played in college before. This is it. I've never played on fields like this before. This is it. I'll just breathe and go. And then it got to the point that you put yourself in enough settings and you develop enough of a familiarity with these types of things that eventually you get conditioned to it. And I don't think that you get callous to it ever because the art of performance never dies. But I think that familiarity is such a blessing too. And I think also what a blessing it is to fail in front of thousands of people.
That's true.
Like, seriously,
dude.
I reframed all of this and I realized in a hurry, I've given up a seeing eye ground ball that scored 2 runs in front of 15,000 people. And then I got to a 2-0 count to the next guy and I got pulled. That's it. I faced 1.5 hitters. Biggest crowd I ever threw in front of. 15,000. That's what I have to show for it. I am a better human now from having done that. Does it still bug me? Sure. I'm absolutely livid about it to this day. But, I think that the way that I try to see this, and as I mentioned before, we isolate this down and we create so much big meaning, whether it's playing a national anthem that you don't know why you're jittery, or whether it's playing a baseball game that you're trying to figure out where those emotions are coming from. What a blessing it is even to fail in a moment like that, because it not only reminds you that you're real, it not only reminds you that you're a human, but it reminds you that these things truly do matter and there's something to celebrate within absolutely everything. So that's what I really lean into. At the same time, I want to add this too, that Oregon State start. You looked unbelievably calm and collected to the point that I've actually never spoke to you about this. I don't know if it was because I was nervous to ask you about it, but like, how vivid is your memory? Do you remember, like you mentioned you remember the wind. What else do you remember from that game?
Just the wind, man. Just the wind. Honestly, I was just going through and there was too many thoughts. It was like system overload. So it just ended up turning off, which was perfect. But it felt super, super intense because it could have been my last game too. So it felt very, very intense. So everything came to fruition right there because I knew there was so much pressure on it that it was helpful. I guess the way that I always tried to think about pitching, or like kind of everybody has their little like mental mantras, and like mine might sound stupid, but I know that pitching in a game is dangerous. I know that there's like baseball because of chance and like because of the pressure that it is, and because you're trying to make it, you have all this pressure about, getting released or getting cut, and it's dangerous. So I just always tried to tell myself like, well, I'm dangerers. So then you go into the game and just think like, here's the danger. Just be like, Walter White, dude, from Breaking Bad. That's where I stole it from when I was in high school. I am the danger.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's not cheesy at all. That's sweet right there, man.
That's what I always tell myself. So now we go down the line. Like I have the pitchers go through after the starter warms up. We all like shake line in the bullpen before we run out, and I'll go through and everybody's fist I touch, I just go, dangerous, feeling dangerous.
So much fun. There you go. I think that's cool. Remain the aggressor, particularly in a game like this, or specifically in the game of baseball. Just remain the aggressor. And I think that can solve a lot of things. That can not only expedite your journey through performance anxiety, but the last thing I want to end is don't be afraid to talk to somebody. Don't be afraid to talk to people about this. I think what you said, the exit interview that you had with that player, that is one of the coolest things, that somebody was not only comfortable to share that with you, but comfortable to also elaborate on those details on what they feel. And I promise that nobody's alone on these types of things. This is why we launched this show, is to be able to have those open types of forums. And you got two people right here that are going to hear you out. So no matter who you are or what you do for a living, I know that that's part of the reason we're here. And trust me, you have to have it at the very minimum. If you were tuning into this, that means you have two people that will bend over backwards for whoever you are. So I want to plant that in there. But at the same time, there are so many people that are willing to help, and so many people that want to see you succeed too. And we are very excited for everybody to find those people in their life and to continue to lead them forward. And I think that is the recipe for performance anxiety. It's never going to go away, but at the same time, it's really cool that it's never going to go away.
It's the truth.
There we go.
That's how you know you're living, man.
We're going to close this thing. That's how you know you're living. Absolutely. We're going to live over a break really quick. We're going to turn the leaf into the second half of the episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. We have a very famous saying in this world of athletics. If you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you play good. We're going to take this one step further. We're going to use this on something that literally everybody in the dugout is going to take a look at. You got to have a good lineup card. Let's make it as big league as possible. We're talking legal-sized paper. We're talking custom teams on the card itself. City, ballpark, date in there. For the most part, these cards are very self-explanatory. Batting order, starting pitchers, bench players, and the bullpen. The nuance of the card itself, however, involves finer details. Each player is listed with the number that corresponds on the scorecard. We covered this in the scorekeeping feature just a few days ago, and here it is in dugout form on the card itself. If a player gets subbed out, that process is very simple. All you do is go in, cross out the starter's name, write in the bench player, and then cross out the bench player's name from the bench placement. You will notice in some of the highest level lineup cards that there are names that are written in all sorts of different colors. This corresponds to, is it a left-handed hitter? Is it a right-handed hitter? Switch hitter? Left-handed or right-handed pitching? The reason this is important is because of a little thing called the platoon advantage. On average, a right-handed pitcher has a slight advantage advantage over right-handed hitters, and vice versa. Left-on-left matchups or right-on-right matchups are something you may commonly hear at the end of games. Managers will often make decisions trying to either set up or avoid. Our last little bit, believe it or not, in the major leagues, there are 3 official lineup cards on field level, 1 in each dugout, and then the umpiring crew also has one because they got to keep order and they got to know where all the players go. It doesn't have to be fancy, but at the same time, it's going to be really cool if it is. Go get yourself a really good lineup card. Evan, what do you think of the drinkware here? Oh, you're mid-sip now.
I mean, that really looks like if that had ice and water in it, I could really use a quesadilla.
Yeah.
Ice and water, I could really use a quesadilla with that.
Dude, these are great, man.
Like lunchtime outside,
man.
You know, it's hot. Like just the ice
cantina.
water. Yeah. Some shade with some fans or something. Yeah.
I was just calling you out because I know you always take a sip of something as soon as we come back from a break,
Always.
and I realize
Because I know you open it. I know you open it right away, so I can always get away with it. I'm like, all right, here he goes. He's gonna open.
He's prepping the vocal cords, getting this thing going.
Mm-hmm.
All right, second half. We covered the juicy business about how to present yourself in the face of performance. I think that presence is such a very important thing. We're going to lean to the other side because baseball is, of course, a performer sport and a spectator sport. Something that I think is very interesting, particularly in my line of work where I do a lot of the game presentation elements that support baseball. I think it's very funny that I will be coordinating something on the concourse, getting the ballpark set up. It's hectic. The gates are about to open. And then for some reason, I will go down to the field like 25 minutes before first pitch to like help out the anthem performer and the ceremonial first pitches. The calmest place in the entire ballpark is the field. Like, I don't understand it. Like, it's amazing to me because you see all these fans that are running around all hectic as hell. And like, I will literally get to field level. And I don't know if it's just because I've got the playing background and maybe somebody doesn't or something like this, but like, I literally step inside the playing field and for some reason it's like simple and it's easier. And it's not from like, I don't think it has anything to do with my playing background. I think it's literally just calmer. And
Dude,
for
it
some
almost
reason,
feels like
it isn't calm.
there's like a glass wall around the field.
That's actually spot on.
Like
That's
you can't really hear as much on the field and it's quieter.
Yeah. Like to see how distant it's like a portal that wraps around the entire dimensions of the field. Like I firmly believe this. I know that sounds silly as hell. So the reason that I present this is because we talked about, all right, in the face of a little bit of heightened anxiety, how do you present yourself as a performer? I think that the other angle of this too is how do you present yourself as a spectator? I think that sure, there's elements to being a good teammate. There's elements to being a good coach, being a good umpire. All right, there are supporting cast members that are on the field itself. There's supporting cast members at the press level. I bring all of this up because I personally believe that all right, well, I have to say this now because I talked myself into it. How ignorant is the average fan? Like, that sounds horrible, but like, is the average baseball fan, are they more or less clueless than you would like to think? Like, I hate saying this, and I know this is kind of a negative. All right, hang on, here we go.
wait, let me help you, dude. Let me help you.
All right, okay, all right.
Okay.
I was going to share a story to illustrate where I'm going with this, but you actually go ahead. Here we go.
As a coach now, there are a lot of comments that come from parents and fans.
Yeah.
Especially parents. Sometimes, unfortunately, I know this is just trying to help. But like, I'm watching the game.
Yeah.
Like I'm watching the game. I know what's going on. I see it. I watch it. I get it. And it's funny because the people who want to tell you what's going on in the game usually are not watching that closely.
That's actually interesting you say that. Yeah, because it's like the people that are really in tune with it don't feel the need to say it. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, that's a very good point.
It's kind of like you'll be at a game and I'll be sitting there to go to a game or something. I went to actually Stephen Kolek's last start in a lot of the viewers might not know who he is, but like I went to his last start or I was at the game before his last start at PNC Park. So I didn't actually get to go to that game. We had our own game, but I got to go to the game before.
Oh, you had the rain out on Saturday. Yeah.
Yes. And sitting next to some of the fans talking about like some of the players on the team that like I've heard stories about now from him, you know, and like learned a lot of the faces and like who they actually are. It's funny just to watch like a regular fan's assumption of like who Manny Machado is and like what kind of person that guy is, right? Or like what kind of person, like, I don't know, for example, like what kind of person Julio Rodriguez is, or like what kind of person George Kirby is. It's like, no, I could tell you those. They're just like, I could tell you who those kind of people are.
Well, yeah, because you pitched when Julio was in the outfield, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool. First of all, I'm sorry, I'm inflating you talking about all the highlights of the career. Actually, you deserve every bit of it.
But this is the truth. It's the truth is that people just make up just what they think is true, or like don't watch, but then like feel the need to say something. So then the average fan will just tell you a random thing, which is fine because they're being innocent. They just want to talk about the game, which is fine. So it's like at the same time you can't blame them. Because, like, I don't blame you for not watching in the 6th inning when it's a 7-run spread and, like, you know, there's just like a ground ball to second out and the next guy works a full count, grounds out to the pitcher. Like, it's just like, what do you, I don't know. I give him credit. Yeah, like, it's fun.
Like, as a fan, you're going to be locked in for 9 innings, really? Yeah, like, no. You know, that's interesting you bring that up. You mentioned sharing a uniform with certain players. Like, you can say, yeah, I know what Julio Rodriguez is like and how organized his locker is, and I can tell you a degree of who he is as a person. Like you mentioned, too, Kolek kind of peels the curtain back a little bit, and you're talking to him, just having a conversation. This is what the Padres are like. Oh, cool. All right. Like things that you would never really know. I remember I loved hearing your minor league stories because it was like coming with a version of something that I desperately wanted to fulfill myself. And I was like able to live somewhat through you. And it was like validating because I was going, okay, so it is similar to how I thought it was. Got it. That makes sense. But all the while, today, I was at the A's play the Phillies, and I'm hanging out, kind of watching loosely, having a good time.
And Bryce Harper's playing just for context, we were gonna do the show later, so I put the game on and was watching the game.
Yeah, there we go.
And Wick sent me a Snapchat in the stands at the game, and like you're like the 5th row behind the dugout, and you were doing the scorebook at the game.
Here we go.
That was when I sent the text, like, "Hey, man. Let's do a show."
Shout out to Willie MacIver debut. Right on. Let's go. Oh, this was upside down. I'm sorry.
It's kind of tight, dude. You should send it to him.
Honestly, I thought about that. Oh, he's probably going to get the lineup card, though. So, like, oh, cool. Some dude in the stands did this. Greatest player I ever interviewed for a story. Greatest player I ever interviewed was Willie MacIver. Congratulations on the debut. Hell yeah. Showed up to the yard today. Didn't even know he was going to debut. He actually did. Awesome stuff. Point being, all right, anyways. So he had a tremendous day. That wasn't where I was going with this, but I had the opportunity to lift him up a little bit. Anyways, as we were talking about fan etiquette, Bryce Harper's playing first. I am on the first base side. Bryce Harper goes out to the field to warm. The pitcher's warming up. Pitch clock's counting down from 2 minutes, 15 seconds. All right, commercial break, right on. First baseman is throwing easy ground balls to the infielders. Harper gets out there, and he doesn't have a baseball. So I look up, and I see him like motioning to the dugout to get a ball. I'm going, Bryce, dude, this is a 4th grade responsibility that you know if you're the first baseman, you take a baseball out to the field. Like, and so he's like showing it up. So I'm going, dude, so I already have conditioned in my mind that I'm like, dude, really? A baseball gets rolled to him, which presumably I figured somebody in the dugout's just like, dude, you're supposed to have one. He rolls it. Bryce flips it with his glove back to the dugout, and there's like, and I'm going, I kind of said under my breath some things that are not show appropriate. I already said one profanity word in the first half. So I'm just like staring at him going, dude, really? So then he gets another baseball, and then he starts going. So I was like pissed, going, dude, that's some juvenile nonsense right here. Then I took about a 4-second breath and realized I literally know nothing about this situation.
Yeah, it just
looks
bad.
I have no clue.
It just looks bad.
Like, Here it was. I was calling him out, going, dude, that's terrible. That's awful. And then I was like, wait, I really don't know. Like,
Okay,
I literally have no idea.
Let me provide some context here, and this is maybe not what happens. I don't know, but in the inning, like the inning ends, and the dugout usually throws a ball to the first baseman. The first baseman puts it in his glove, puts his glove on the bench. So, to his credit, and to your smartness of being able to think like maybe I just don't know the full situation, somebody might have jacked the ball out of his glove, and he's going,
"Oh,
where's my ball?"
Okay. That's a good point.
But then the flip to him from the dugout
it playfully,
might have been like a playing around thing. Or it could have been like, dude, you're supposed to put a new ball in my glove every inning. Which I don't know. I'd say it's probably a 60-40 chance.
Well, yeah. Well, and it's funny, too, because, like, I would love to ask him. Like, if I were given the opportunity to ask Bryce Harper anything today, it would be that. He probably already forgot about it. So, like, I probably literally can't even get the answer that I want about this. So, to point this forward, all right, so I look as an onlooker at Bryce Harper. I know this might kind of divide our audience. I see the different accessory colors he wears and how flashy his cleats are. It's not admittedly my kind of game. Like, I wouldn't play that. I can't say I'd want my kid to play that way, but that also doesn't mean that he's wrong. He's clearly accomplishing plenty of things. He's got a very good following, and some people would argue he's doing good things for the game. I think about the average fan doesn't take a minute to take a look at those types of things. And it judges by me seated on the first base side of the field. I was astonished to see fans of both teams, yelling at the umpire about the strike zone, which, for those of you that have spent time in a dugout, it is unbelievably difficult to tell what was inside or what was outside if you're sitting in the dugout.
I would have our catchers look at me this year and like because I'm calling the pitches, but I'm sitting there but I can't see. So like if we're set up outside and the catcher's like bang. You know, I'm sitting there thinking, like, everybody in the dugout's going, where is it?
Spotted it up. Yeah, you know? Of course.
And I'm sitting there like, was that out? And I hit the little button I have on the pitch comm, and the catcher looks at me, and I'm just like, is that in or out or what? And he looks at me and he goes, well, more often than not, honestly, which sucks, was.
Yeah. Oh, no.
And it's like, all right. But the reaction, like, when you get this,
yeah,
the reaction as like a fan would be like, well, what the heck, man?
Yeah,
like that's not supposed to happen. But like the best skill ever, dude, is expect the expected strike.
Yeah.
And it was called a ball, and I'd be like, okay. Of course. I mean, it's gonna happen.
Well, and it's just well,
sorry,
I mean,
that was kind of a tangent there.
No, this was awesome. That's exactly what we're looking for, right? I mean, the fans in the building at Sutter Health Park today could have. I'm sorry, I need to be careful how I say this because I am a paid employee of that venue. I need to be very cautious. It was a lovely day at the ballpark, everybody. Well, no, and I mean, I guess this kind of feeds in, and I'll layer into this too. I think the reverence of certain baseball venues, like Evan, you grew up a Cardinals fan. Busch Stadium has a very high reverent baseball setting. Like if you go there, people know what they're talking about. I know that me living in Northern California now, I've been to Oracle Park plenty of times. The San Francisco Giants have a very well-composed fan base that shows up to games, and it is a breath of fresh air to attend games there. We have a good crowd here in Sacramento too. I'm not trying. There's always an outlier, no matter what. Even if you're at Fenway Park, there's always an outlier. I'm not speaking poorly about where I work. Let it be known.
Dude, it's
no, but I mean, seriously, we do have good crowds, and I would argue that there are good crowds wherever you go. But I think about just taking a minute to pause. And this is something, you mentioned, all right, yes, I like to keep score at games. It keeps me locked in. It's a fun thing for me to stay focused and to feel like I'm part of the game again. I think about how my mind shifts. Like literally, if you want to be a very reverent baseball fan, and if you want to look very put together, like print out one of these and just show up. And you don't even really need to know what you're doing. You could just fill in the squares that correspond. Like there's no right or wrong way to do it, but literally it slows your thought process down. It puts you in the setting just a little bit more, and it gives you better context. I also think as a fan, there is in the stands a lot of alcohol that flows, especially in the professional settings. Which, true. As those of you that are aware, that does not always bring out the best in certain people. So, I mean, I just think as far as composing yourself as a fan, taking a step back and even just taking a breath. And I think that this is a big, very cool thing that separates the game of baseball from other sports is because you have an opportunity to breathe in the game of baseball. Now, yes, in football, there's time in between plays and you know that there's a built-in time that you could kind of let your guard down, then focus and then let it go. That happens in baseball, sure, but not every pitch gets put into the field of play, for example. So is there anything that you have noticed about like the most reverent fans? Like, let's kind of put it this way. If you and I went to a ball game, what do you believe would separate us from just the random dude in like section 125 or something?
Okay,
like
so
that?
when I was younger, when we would go to Cardinal games, if we would go to a different venue and watch a game, we would make fun of the fans that got
Yeah,
excited on a fly ball.
yeah, no, that's a big one.
Because
Yeah,
we
yeah.
knew in St. Louis, like everybody knew. So if the ball went up in the air and it was like, a
Oh,
shallow fly ball to the center fielder, it's like nobody in the park said a word. It was just like,
well, how old were you when you first started recognizing that? Like, what age were you when you finally kind of figured that out?
I had to go to two different ballparks.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point.
We went to a Royals game, and the Royals game was it was like we noticed that we were like, oh, and I asked
Yeah,
my dad, I'm like why do they? Because I was young, I'm like, Dad, why do they get so excited when there's all these fly balls? And he's like, they just don't know baseball, son. In Cardinals jerseys at the game. But like you watch hockey,
the other
dude.
side of Missouri.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's only like 5 hours away. But you watch hockey, like have you ever watched? So like I'll watch the Kraken hockey games because Bailey and I became fans of the Kraken just
Yeah,
as we met and as they became a franchise, and we wanted a sport to watch in the winter. We weren't too
yeah,
keen
you were
on
in the sweet
basketball.
spot for it. Yeah,
We've been to a lot of Kraken hockey games now in different locations. One in Pittsburgh, one in Arizona at the Arizona
look at you.
State hockey venue.
Let's go,
Doggy
Mullet
River.
Arena.
Yeah, because the Coyotes got booted because they didn't pay their rent, and then a multiple in Seattle. But I watch them on TV when they play Calgary in Canada, and that like all the 10 rows you can see on the broadcast that are outside the rink,
Yeah.
they're just sitting down. It looks like a golf. It looks like a golf. They're like, here,
Oh,
dude, just watching
dude.
the puck. Because it's a whole different thing. You go
Yeah.
to like a Florida
Yeah, right.
Panthers game. I don't know this, never been to it, but I would just imagine it's a lot different than
You
going
can
to like
presume.
a Winnipeg
Yeah.
Jets game. I would just assume that's the case.
Yeah. That's really special too. And I think that this kind of ties in what we were talking about. Coping with performance anxiety or mitigating it is you got to be comfortable putting you don't even need to be comfortable. You got to just put yourself in those situations. I think about how cool it is. Like you mentioned, it took putting yourself in the position of going to Kauffman Stadium in order to see it and in order to see a different layer of this. I have not been to Fenway Park before, but the only reason I want to go to Boston, like no disrespect to the history there, and I think part of the reason that I haven't gone is because I don't really care to see anything in Boston other than Fenway Park, which I know is clearly not going to be a very good topic with any Red Sox followers that are tuning into this. I only want to see the ballpark. Yeah, that's all right, whatever.
It's okay. They like their ballpark
No,
too.
I mean, I think there you go. I think about like the different places that I have been, and I have been to now 13 major league stadiums. And I think about the highest reverence for the game, like you mentioned. What's the equivalent of the Calgary fans that show up? Probably Oracle Park has the most intellectual fans that I've seen, and it helps that their venue very much feeds into that type of setting. At the same time, it's very interesting to see one, how rowdy, but also how locked in fans at Dodger Stadium are. And this was before the Ohtani wave. I haven't been there since, but I also know that me growing up in Colorado, going to an average Rockies game, and then going to the All-Star game, very different type of thing.
Sure.
And I remember like going to the All-Star game in what I consider my park. Like that's where I grew up. That was what I did. And I remember just like smiling ear to ear going, no disrespect to the baseball intellect at an average Rockies game. one may say it's the greatest bar in the Mountain Time Zone, and that kind of maybe takes away from the ballpark a little bit. But my point being is it felt like the capital. I mean, it was the center of the baseball universe when the All-Star game was there. And it was unbelievably refreshing to recognize how cool this was. So on the other foot here, I also want to make sure that baseball is for everybody. And it should be. I mean, we should include everybody. I admit that, if I went to a Seattle Kraken game, I am clearly not going to know what you and Bailey do. I'm also going to walk into it trying to pretend like I am one of the Calgary fans, that's how I want to compose myself at this point. But no, it's interesting too, because I feel like the answer for this, and I know that there's probably a bunch of old baseball heads that are sitting here tuning into you and I say this, like, yeah, people suck, right on. Like, no, I mean, the point is we should celebrate the game. Like, no, like, don't be vehemently against people just because they don't. And, I say all of that too, because if I was jumping to a conclusion today of calling out Bryce Harper, I would have been a clueless baseball fan. And I have been that person before. Like, I have absolutely been there. I've said things at baseball games that I probably regret. I don't think it hurt anybody, but it's like, that was a dumb comment. Like, I would say something about a starting pitcher that got pulled 2 innings ago, and I'm like, oh, no, I look clueless, and I got to sit here and pretend. But no, it's just, I guess, sitting there in the stands and kind of recognizing it. Have you ever got to a point where it's almost like you just kind of laugh? Or how do you kind of neutralize whatever those feelings are to make sure that you can enjoy it no matter what?
So are we talking like, am I involved in the game but in the dugout, or am I in the stands?
But let's do dugout. That wasn't what I meant, but I actually care about that better. I think that's a better way to go.
If I want to neutralize the feelings of like things that I want to say.
Actually, yes.
Oh gosh. I don't usually say much of the dugout, honestly. It's just the same thought of expect the expected. Like, just know that something's about to happen. Or like oftentimes, dude, if you're watching the game, you can kind of multitask. Like, you being at the game can notice that with Bryce Harper. Because when the inning's over, you don't just check out. Because you're watching. You're seeing the game, but you're also seeing other things. Because it's at this point, watching the game, it's like you do it almost intuitively. So you just, by habit. So you watch the other stuff. I like to watch reactions in the dugout. I like to watch little communications, like with what Bryce Harper did, or like maybe some communications across the infield in between pitches, right? Or like it's especially became apparent as a coach now, where like I'm sitting in the dugout and I'm watching, and like I see a different look from like a middle infielder, right? Or like a different like kind of setup or approach from a first baseman, and it's like, okay, they're gonna back pick, You can pick up on that as a fan in those big league games, but like at the same time, nothing ever really is that extreme where I don't usually say things at the game at all, which is boring for the content of this episode, but I usually just don't say anything.
Well, no, I think that's a good point though, because I think it's so often when you don't say things, your words carry bigger weight. And I think as far as like the grounding recipe, and this is actually an interesting point that came up out of this. I read an article the other day, and it was talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. I believe their traveling security director, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's a former police officer from Chicago. And if I'm not mistaken, he worked in like an undercover narcotics crackdown. Like, point being, this guy was in the thick of Chicago dealing with this. And now he travels with the Phillies. And he's been used as like, how the Phillies use him. All right, he takes care of the families, he takes care of the kids, he takes care of the players, he travels with them. And if you've got a guy that's been through that, like, he's seen a lot. And now all of a sudden, that not only does he have your back, but he's there as somebody that's like very grounding as a human. You go up and have a conversation with him, and you know that he's going to help you frame things in certain contexts. And I think part of the reason that, baseball, enjoying it for everybody, not everybody's going to be as locked in on the game, which is okay. Like, I mean, it's a very fun place to hang out, even if you're not locked in on the game. And I mean, there's something there for everybody there. But I think that feeding off of the people around you, and this pitches into when you take the field as a player, you feed off of the people around you in the dugout or in the stands. And that isn't always verbal. Like, that doesn't have to be a verbal cue all the time. But I know, as you mentioned, you don't say a whole lot in the dugout, but when you do, people will turn their head. And I think that this is a very interesting point too, because it's the people that talk all the time that if you make it a frequent thing to say a lot of words, they don't mean as much as they would if you said fewer. And this is something that, particularly in the stands, if I hear some drunk dude arguing about the strike zone, I'm probably not going to pay a whole lot of attention to it. If I hear my grandfather say something about it, doesn't say a whole lot, very calm and collected, and I hear it from him, I'm like, you've been following this for quite some time. To this point, the hive mind type of thing, not to double down on this, but Mark Kotze, the manager of the A's, got fired today. Or wait, whoa. Got ejected today. Hang on, reel that back. Wow. Oh boy, we might need to edit this in post-production. Oh boy. We might not be able to take this to air. I might actually get disciplined at work. He got ejected today for balls and strike dispute. Now, check, this is neutral. I'm not sharing an opinion on this. Wow. All right. Over balls and strikes. And call it what you will. I went and I looked at the video and I'm like, all right, I can see how he might have had a case here. It was very interesting to follow along with the cadence of the fans after he gets ejected. Now, all of a sudden, every fan in the building is yelling at anything that's remotely borderline. And mind you, it's very difficult to see the strike zone in almost 80% of the seats. So it's interesting to follow this too. And I think that, as you mentioned, even if you don't say a whole lot in the dugout, you will say something. It carries more weight and it creates a movement, which I think is something that we can learn into and really lean into as well, recognizing that you might not always have the voice that you want to, but if you get a foul ball and you've sat there all calm and collected, and then you hand it to the kid in front of you, there's a certain degree of magic there that this guy's going to be like, wait a second, there's some layer to this that I'm going to feel really good about. So
okay, here we go. This is fan etiquette.
Yeah, here we go.
This is fan etiquette. If I see a guy catch a baseball and he gives it to a kid, dude, plus out of you. Plus. If there's a kid that if like you're in a bullpen and the guys are asking for a baseball, like fans or something, and it's a guy asking for a baseball and a little kid asking for a baseball or whatever, or they're not even asking, you're just throwing it to him and you throw it to the kid and the old guy grabs it, might not even be a guy, right? It could just be an older person. They grab it from the kid.
Yeah.
Dude, that makes me more mad than anything in the world. It's like, you have money, just go to the shop and buy one.
Yeah, literally. Like, you do not need this baseball whatsoever.
Yeah, let the kid take it. He said, come into the game. That's one thing that bugs me the most is fan etiquette right there. But you know when you see somebody in the stands catch it and then they just like casually like give it to the kid. It's like the best thing ever. I'm like, there you go. Nice move.
Well, in that way, everybody feels good, too. Like, I mean, this is going to mean so much more to the kid, too. Like, if I leave a big league park with a ball, I'm going to be like, all right, cool. I've thrown these before. But, like, I mean, you realize you can create a movement. And I think this feeds into the movie Bull Durham. Annie, Susan Sarandon's character, has a very famous quote that says, quote, "The world was made for those who are not cursed with self-awareness," end quote. Which I think is a very pertinent thing to think about because, all right, if you're not self-aware, the world was designed for you. You don't have to have a care in the world. You just get to kind of frequent this. How appropriate that this is a Kevin Costner movie, and that's very much the recipe of his movies, is illustrating the nuance of people that are self-aware. But I think about carrying yourself that way. If you walk into a seating bowl or wherever you are in the venue, just taking an extra second to not only take a breath yourself and just kind of acclimate to where you are, but at the same time, how cool is it if you're like, all right, where's the nearest kid? I know what kind of memory they're supposed to make today. There was a family that was sitting in front of me today. I know what they're here for. Let's help them have it. There were a couple dudes that were a few beers in, having a very good time. Looked almost like a bachelor party to my right. I know what they're there for. They're allowed to be that way as well. But how beautiful it was if it was like a symphony orchestra of fans that were just sitting in there, and every single one of them had a different intention. And this is part of the reason I want to feed into, there's not a fixed mindset to be a fan. Like, as much as I think it's really cool if there's a routine fly ball that nobody panics about, like, that's cool and that's reverent, and I personally like that kind of thing. But all the while, there's a memory to be made for absolutely everybody. And I think that when people find that, that is such a cool thing, no matter what that memory is, because you know that's why they come there and that's why they feel really good about it. So I hope that is a lot better of a closer than me mistakenly using the word fired over somebody that I do not need to start any speculation over.
That's funny, dude. You got two things you got to bleep here in post-production. Then.
I mean, I kind of want to run it. Should I just run it? I don't know. Oh, wow.
Here's one thing,
I'll put a little note here.
Is we didn't get into this, but just picture yourself taking a radar gun to a high school game with a good amount of fans, and and the fan etiquette of you sitting behind home plate with the radar gun. All of a sudden, you're a part of the games. You're like almost a part of the game just because you're holding a radar gun and taking notes. Suddenly, you're like a part of the game, and everybody wants to say something, man. That's like,
if you want to stir something up, if you like the amount of high school parents, like look at that guy over there.
Yeah,
like,
go ask.
You really want to have
questions.
A good time, just out of nowhere. Just go and grab some. It doesn't even need to work. Like literally, just
go get a radar gun and sit behind a home plate. Just if you want to experience it, just grab a plain black polo or a plain polo and go in khaki pants and go sit behind a high school game with a radar gun and a notepad. You don't even have to be affiliated with anybody. Just go do it and you will understand fan etiquette immediately.
I think it's funny too, because how seriously we seem to take ourselves too. Like here it is, like literally we're having this episode, we're just having a good time talking about this, and I'm already like taking it serious going, what if somebody from my employer hears me say, well, I solved everything, like we don't need to worry about it, like we cleared it up and it's fine. But no, I mean it's interesting too, because like living in fear, and this is something that I've tried to mitigate and not have a part of my life, and I've tried to stay aware on this as much as I can, but like what are we afraid of? And this is performance anxiety as a whole across any platform. Like I'm afraid of things, like everybody's afraid of certain things, but I think that it's a very cool and warming thing when you recognize that people don't need to be afraid to go to a ballpark. And that's one of the most gratifying sides of it too, is that you're allowed to be whoever you want to be, ultimately. People are going to look at you a little funny if you're just not really shutting up and you're having really weird takes and you're not really composed. But I think all the while too, like just the degree of patience, and it doesn't take anything to take an extra second or to think something through. And I think part of the reason that baseball has the reverence that other sports maybe don't have is because you're allowed to take a minute to breathe and you're allowed to take a minute to think. You don't have that opportunity if you're guarding Kobe Bryant or LeBron James. But like if I'm going out on the pitcher's mound and I'm facing Aaron Judge, like it's not only allowed, but it's encouraged that I would take a breath in between every single pitch. And I think that seeing how that scales across the masses, and when you see that with tens of thousands of people inside one venue that all share that similar cadence, I think that is such a cool breath of life that is part of the reason that I consider the game of baseball very sacred. And I think part of the reason that I try to protect this game in many ways is because I realize how special that truly is. And that was the main reason that I wanted to have this type of discussion. But at the same time, I also understand that there are a lot of different definitions of sacred. And I encourage anybody that is tuning in to find out what that means for you. I know that we do this in a baseball setting, and this is why we do what we do. But find out what that definition of sacred is in your life. Live it to the fullest, and whoever you can have to help you find that as well. Those are the people that you want to share memories with, and those are the people that you want to share your lives with. So I say that as a very sappy and heartfelt thing to give a shout out to a dude that I like sharing my life with because he's one of the most uplifting people I know. Evan, we are back in business. Super proud of everything that we do. We're going to close up episode 22, but I'm going to give the floor to you with whatever you got.
Takes all kinds, man. Fans make the game.
Yeah.
Fans make the game. Of course, you're gonna get something that's ludicrous, no matter what. But like that's what makes the game. And baseball's a mystery to everybody, even to those people who feel they know it the most, man.
Yes.
So that's the fun part about the game, and that's why people come to watch, and that's why people have hot takes, and that's why people do crazy stuff. Talking about the umpire.
Yeah.
That's what makes baseball great. It's not perfect. It's not black and white.
I think what makes it really cool is you're allowed to be whoever you want to be, and you're allowed to fulfill a purpose, which that's what we are here to do, is to hopefully encourage other people to find that. Just as we mentioned, to cultivate that ambition and enthusiasm in others through the art of performance. We're here to do that. We're here to help you out any way that we possibly can, and you always know where to find us. Thank you very much for tuning in. Episode 22 of The Night Pitch is going to be wrapping up. Be sure to find us on all the social media channels. I don't want to share this quite yet, but I also do want to share this. We've got a website that's in the works. It's going to be very awesome. I'm holding myself to this, that in a matter of weeks, we're going to have everything loaded in there, and it's going to be very cool. Details to come. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you being part of the Legion that is carrying the torch as best as we can. As always, you know where to find us. He's Evan. I'm Justin. Out.
So here's to life, and every joy it brings. So here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. So here's to life.